tervist, head vaatajad, Fotografiska jutud on taas eetris, minu nimi on Aleksander Eeri Laupmaa ja kuna tänane külaline ei ole õppinud selgeks eesti keelt, siis keeran kohe ümber enda aju inglise keelele. So my guest today is Julia S.H. Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Your work shows an amazing fascination with the human body.
Yes.
And maybe you want to tell us to start off, how did you become fascinated by the human body?
Yeah, that is a good question. I don't know if there's a straightforward answer, but I think I grew up in Stockholm, Sweden in the 80s, and I always felt like we had a very pragmatic view on the human body. So for me, like nudity and the way we relate to our bodies wasn't like a big thing, but as soon as I moved to the US, I realized just like how culturally loaded the body was, and sure it is all around the world, but I felt like it was such a big jump from coming from a place where I had no real sort of body awareness, and I never really talked down on myself, and that was like a really terrible habit that I started with in my 20s when I moved there. And I guess my photography is about exploring like why suddenly like I'm putting all these ideals on myself, pressures that are completely unnecessary. And I think that kind of photography for me is a kind of a self-healing journey in some ways, and also a way of giving a voice for culturally underrepresented body types as well.
So, but basically, until you were living in Sweden, you didn't have that fascination? It only started...
Yeah, because I wasn't even really aware of my body when I lived there. And granted, I mean, I haven't lived there since I was 18, and I'm sure, you know, there's pressure on young women to look a certain way now that maybe didn't exist when I was growing up, but I certainly didn't feel it when I was growing up. So, yeah, the fascination came a lot later. I felt like I was incredibly free with my expression, and it wasn't until I moved I really kind of became self-conscious. And
was there like a big switch or change that happened in your work when you moved, or can you point to the time when it started that you started doing this type of work?
You know, I actually stopped doing all photography after I finished art school, and it wasn't that I wanted to, but I just took a longer break than I had anticipated, because coming to the United States was more difficult than I thought. Everything in terms of immigration, staying there, finding a job and becoming neutralized, what have you. So it wasn't until 2012 I picked up a camera again, and I wasn't even sure where to start and what I wanted to do. And I had some vague idea I wanted to do portraiture because I've always been interested in human subjects. And I remember bringing in a group of women for this project and ended up seeing them in different poses, and I was getting like more and more overwhelmed with like amount of jewelry and clothing and whatever they were wearing, and eventually I just asked them to take it all off and did a nude shoot with them, and it kind of started this whole journey of nude photography that I've been doing. So I kind of stumbled upon it just through that shoot itself, and I didn't quite know that I had so much to say about it.
And how did you approach them? Was that like the pitch to them that I want to portray a certain type of body in a certain type of way?
No, not
or what was
initially.
yeah.
No, initially I just wanted to pick up a camera again, and that spurred this particular photo shoot. But building upon that, it really opened up a door just with the communication I have with the models, and understanding just like how, especially women, think about their bodies and how incredibly hard we are on them, and these like unrealistic body ideals that we try to adhere to. So the camera in some ways become a passport into other worlds. It becomes like a door into other people's hidden lives, and I feel connecting with people about their insecurities heals me in some way. And I think there are some body types and bodies in general that are, you know, struggling more maybe than others too. And those are the ones I really try and give a voice in my work. And in the United States especially, there's a lot of people on the struggle with weight and whatnot, and also the extreme bullying that they are experiencing. So that became something I became quite interested in exploring, because it's a very sort of hidden journey they're on in some ways. And it's been incredibly touching to work with them, and I try and give them I suppose, a platform to exist as artworks rather than saying like, oh, these are now nude people. We're looking at them as nude as objects, but they're human beings in their sort of fullness. So that's what I'm trying to portray.
Yeah, it's also very interesting that many times, whoever we have an exhibition at Fotografiska, oftentimes I show people the exhibition and then they ask, but why has the artist chosen to photograph these people naked?
Yeah, why not?
And yeah, exactly. Well, this is what I answer every single time, that the naked body is the natural way of the human form. But the way that we have been conditioned is that we question why somebody naked rather than why are they not naked? Why has somebody decided to cover their body for their art?
Yeah, I mean, you can also argue then that clothes is a way of, dictating how we look at bodies. I mean, I'm wearing this thing now because I don't really like wearing tight clothes because there are certain parts of my body that I don't really like. So, I mean, this is also indicating a way that I want you to perceive me and my body just by dressing. So in nudity, like, we're there in our most natural form, as you say, and there's like nothing to hide, and that's what we really look like. So for me, that's more exciting in some ways, but it's also completely uninteresting to me how we look naked. And I think just because I still feel very pragmatic about other people's bodies. I just don't feel that about myself. I can truly aesthetically be intrigued and find extreme pleasure in the visual representation of other bodies, but yet I'm like super hard on myself. And I don't know what that disconnect is. I mean, I can feel kinder toward myself through the discussions I have with my models, for sure. So it's a very self-serving, selfish thing that I'm doing by photographing them in some ways. I mean, I like to say it's all for the greater good, but like for me, it's a healing journey too. Yeah. Of just befriending my body again.
But that's very cool that you see that, at least, because I feel that there are many artists and it's not like a knock on them, but it's that they do a certain type of work. And again, it's focused on a certain type of issue or a problem, but they're unable to see how it connects to their own insecurities.
Right.
Yeah, so at least to have that perspective and to know that, oh, actually, I'm trying to heal myself with that work, I think it's very, very valuable. How do the subjects themselves usually perceive what you're trying to do? Is it hard for them to open up? Is it hard for them to show themselves? Is it hard for them to pose?
I would say in the beginning, when I started photographing, especially bigger bodies, it was more of a hurdle because I didn't have the kind of visual portfolio to back up to say this is what I'm trying to do. And that completely changed once I had a couple of models pose for me, where I had now a visual reference of saying, listen, I'm trying to just use your body and create an artwork, basically. So that was definitely, I think, a turning point after I worked with a wonderful woman who's been featured in my work a lot, called Angelina Duplicia. And so after she posed, there was a lot of people in her immediate circle that reached out to me and said, hey, listen, we really want to help you with this. I think you're giving a voice to us and we find it important and we'd like to pose. So they were incredibly generous after that, which was really nice to really connect with a kind of a group of people I had no access to previously.
And I would take that most of your subjects are also from the States?
They are, yeah. Some obviously have immigrated like myself, but yes, they are US-based.
Because what you pointed towards earlier was that the cultural shift is so strong, like if you compare Scandinavian countries to the States, how we perceive the body and how much we think about it, talk about it, point to it. And I know people who have come to Finland or Estonia and they go to a sauna, like people from the States, for example, and they want to stay clothed and everybody's just like, why don't you just like be naked and everybody else is naked? And the way that they talk about it is those crazy people, they want to be naked next to me and they look at me weird, like why am I not naked? And they have this very strong, like this very Puritan perspective on like what you're doing is so strange, it's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel, I hear you. There's so many of my American friends that are just perplexed about this co-ed sauna thing. And so many of the guys are like, I'm so afraid I would get a boner. I'm like, You'd be hard pressed to get a boner in there. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I feel like that is like the least sexual place you can go to. Maybe your doctor. I mean, unless you have a fetish for that.
Yeah. Would you be willing to give some examples of your own insecurities? Like when you went to the States, like what was the thing that you felt insecure about? How did you first perceive this shift?
I think, honestly, I felt it already when I moved to England for school. And I remember the first couple of days I was there, I was so used to in Sweden, like we hug and kiss goodbye, men, women, no big deal. And I did it there, and the guy was like, just froze up and thought I was like maybe coming on to him or something. And I realized this whole tactical, like I'm gonna touch you thing, the private space thing was much more honor there than it was in Scandinavia, in my opinion. And that goes for United States as well. Like I felt it was misconstrued a lot. Misconstrued maybe as intimacy or trying to, I don't know, like invade someone's private space. Because I don't know, all I ever remember from growing up in Sweden was just like, we're always hugging and kissing. It's like no big deal, but maybe that has changed too. I can't really comment on that now, but yeah, that was one of the first things.
Have you seen like a through line with all the different people that you have photographed, like a common, again, let's say a common misjudgment about themselves or a misplaced belief about themselves that makes them suffer or makes them not enjoy life or see themselves as being not enough? Yeah,
I think I have this wonderful model I work with, Leslie, who said, the biggest bodies are usually the least visible in the room. And I think that kind of stuck with me, that there's this quiet judging happening that is really making a lot of them feel quite alienated, because they're either maybe attacked for being really large, but not to their face. Like they hear about it on social media. Let's say they post a picture, like this incredible fat shaming, and there's fat shaming in the media. It's all kind of indirect rather than to their face. So in a lot of public situations, they just get looked at in a way that isn't pleasant. So, and I noticed that too, like when I go to lunch with them or anything else, it must be incredibly hard. Yeah, I can't imagine what it's like to have to live like that.
And have you ever had anybody who hasn't been willing to actually open up in a way that you can photograph them, that they still feel too much shame or too much embarrassment, that they say like, hey, I can't go through with it, it's too much for me?
I haven't, and I think I've been really lucky, or maybe we've connected on a human plane before we even photograph, because I feel like the conversations about nudity and representation are incredibly important to have before you photograph. And everything I do is very informal. It's quick, and I try and work always within their limitations. But I've been surprised that there haven't been a lot of limitation I had to adhere to. So, no, actually not. And I hope it's because they feel comfortable.
Yeah, well, it is quite clear looking at your works that you have a very pure intention. That
that's
your
nice.
intention
Thank
is
you.
not to shame anybody. Your intention is not to, I'm not sure what the word is. Like, it's not fantasy, it's not sexualization, it's not any type of fetishization. It's just, this is human form. This is human body. It's
I
very,
appreciate
very
that,
pure.
because in the States they always try and frame it like, oh, you're celebrating the body. And I said, I never tried to do any of those things. These are labels you're putting on, because they talk a lot about body positivity, and I'm not considering myself some body positivity activist. I mean, that's, if someone gets that from the work, then that's wonderful. Like that's a great, thing, but that's not what I'm aiming to do. I'm not trying to put anyone on a pedestal and say, like, I'm not hailing a body type. I'm just trying to give them the the picture.
Yeah, this is very, very important because recently, I'd say like about a month ago, we had from a certain company, a big group of people came to Fotografiska to see the exhibitions, and there was a beautiful exhibition by Pixie Liao.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know Pixie Liao? Yeah. And she has some photos of herself and her partner. Almost naked, some naked, no like hardcore nudity or anything, but you can just see that they're not clothed.
Yeah.
And one of the people from the company was from the States, and she was the person who had organized the event. Everybody else was from different European countries. And I went through the exhibition with them. I talk about the exhibition. Everything is just as normal. And at some point, she starts apologizing to everybody because she says that she's from the States, and in the States, it's not appropriate to go somewhere with your colleagues where you can see the naked human body.
Oh,
And
wow.
everybody from Europe was just like, what are you talking about? This is like, it's just an exhibition. And it's not like hardcore porn or anything. It's not.
Right.
It's not. Yeah. It's just beautiful human bodies, just next to each other, just naked, nothing else, no sexuality, nothing like that. But she was apologizing because she felt like she had like crossed the boundary that she shouldn't have crossed.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Interesting cultural differences.
Yeah, no, it really
again,
is. It
right?
really is. It's a place where, you know, I find United States to be so progressive in some ways and then so completely conservative at others. And I think, you know, obviously now with abortion bans and everything, you know, coming into light, it's like, ooh, you know, we got to look at America for what America is now too, which is incredibly divided.
Yeah, it talks to the previous point that you made as well, that it's like you have all the extremes in America at the same time. At the same time, you have, again, as you said, like this body positivity movement, but it's, again, even the body positivity, it's a very certain type of like...
oh yeah, it's very
like,
polarized.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this. It isn't like, let's just be accepting. It's let's start praising. Let's start glamorizing. Let's start doing whatever, not just being like, bodies are like this, bodies are like that. It always has to be like, there has to be like this mission, this hardcore fighting for a certain type of cause.
I mean, I think the best we can aim for is body neutrality. Saying, okay, here's the body, and it does this thing, and it does that thing, and great. I mean, beyond that, we're putting so much pressure on it, the way it's supposed to behave and look and everything. So, yeah, the body positivity movement, like, I know they mean good, but, you know, sometimes they do more harm too, because this positive self-talk is also not sustainable, in my opinion. Maybe it's because I like to call myself a realist. I think in America, I am considered a pessimist. You know.
Yeah.
You know, like I think when I moved there, everyone is you. How would I best describe this? Like, there's some irony that's lacking. Like, if you go in and they really think you can do it all. It's like you're always supposed to be like, well, anyone can do it. Everything is like a Nike slogan. You know, you can do it. And I'm like, maybe I can't do it. And they're like, don't talk like that to yourself. And I'm like, no, really, I really don't think I can do it. Like, I had an ACL replacement. I really don't think I should be playing soccer.
Yeah.
You know, I'm quite worried about it. Like, no, that's just your negative self-talk talking. I'm like, no, that's my ligament talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Or lack of ligament.
Yeah, and all the commercials, like also that Nike, for example, has like just you have to progress and be better every single day. I'm like, no, maybe I can be better 5 days a week at maximum, but on Saturdays and Sundays I don't want to be better.
No,
I want to relax. I maybe want to regress even a little bit. I don't have to get better every single day. It's not that important.
Also, I only got better in my 20s, and now everything is like declining. I mean, I'm just trying to be realistic, you know. So.
Okay, wonderful. We're gonna come right back. We're gonna take a small commercial break and keep on talking. And see you soon. And we're back from the commercial break. Julia, beforehand, we mentioned something, and that brought into my mind another exhibition that we have on at the Fotografiska at the moment by Joe Giussocchi. Do you know his works as well?
Oh no, you put me on the spot.
It doesn't matter.
I want to see it today.
Yeah,
now.
but well, it's a beautiful exhibition, and he's an artist from South Korea, born in 1992, and for the past 10 years he's been making photos that try to basically harmonize things that usually are very contrasted. And what I mean by that, like taking like modern technology and putting them together with like traditional South Korean clothing, or you have something that is very, very new and very modern put together with like ancient statues. But he doesn't do it in a way that makes it feel like these things don't belong together. He does it in a way that gives you the feeling like, hey, this is the world that we live in. These things, they can harmonize. And because we're living in this very strange moment where we have like the old and the new at the same time. We have everything at the same time. And we have, again, this polarization where there's a bunch of people that feel like we're moving towards the future, and it's bad because we're not human anymore. And there are some people who just want to move back to the woods and like stop using electricity and whatever. And then there are other people who just say like, no, we shouldn't even be human and we shouldn't even have our emotions because this is only bringing us pain. So let's just be even more technology, even more alien, even more futuristic. But he's somebody who's able to bring those things together in a very natural way, that he just again shows it to you. And why I'm talking about this is because I feel this is what you're doing with the human body as well. You're just like, this is just the way it can be. And he uses a lot of flowers. And flower is something that if you're just looking at a flower, you're not angry at the flower, you're not pissed off at the flower, you're not jealous of the flower, you're not anything about the flower. You're just like, oh, this is just a flower. And we're completely able to do that with flowers, but we're very unable to do that with humans. Because with anybody who we see, we have some judgments, we have some jealousy, we have some preconceived notions, we want something from them, we're afraid of them, whatever it is. And with his works, I feel like he gives this feeling that I can just look another human as a flower as well. That it's like, let's say a rose, you have thorns in a rose, and if the thorn like picks you a bit, and hurts you, you're not angry at the rose because you're like, oh, this is a rose. This is what a rose does. But if a human being hurts us, you're like, how could you do this to me? You're being so evil. You're being this. You're being that. We want to change the people. We want them to change in a way that we would feel comfortable. You know?
Yeah.
And I feel this is again very, very similar to what I see in your work. Is that you just show the human body as a flower, basically.
Oh, that's
this
nice.
is this type of flower, this is that type of flower, but I'm not going to judge it, I'm not going to glamorize it, I'm not going to put it on a pedestal, I'm just going to show it as it is, and you can just look at it and accept it.
This is really nice. Like, this is the way I would love to talk about my work in the States, but without them adding on the whole body positivity and all those angles too. I think that's like incredibly healthy. And
yeah,
that is, you know.
Because so many of your works, again, you have photographed people in nature, and they have a very natural look, but also a very mystical, not a mystical, like a fantasy look at the same time, but not the fantasy in a way of like a fairy tale. It's like, not sure what I want to say. It has this fantasy quality. So is there like a reason why these are the settings that you choose?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always referred to, at least myself, as like non-places. Because I don't really know either what they are, or what they don't need to be anything. And yeah, sometimes when I get too much context, it takes me out of things. And I think that is also what I like to give the viewer, is an opportunity to create the narrative for themselves of where they are, what they might be doing.
You've been doing it for about 10 years now, right?
Yeah, like 10 to 12.
Has there been a change in perception, a change in your views? Was there something that you believed or thought 10 years ago that you've changed your mind about over the course of doing these projects?
Yeah, I think I was more apologetic about my work in the beginning and what I was trying to do. Like, I was really asking people for a lot, because I felt like that was the way you were supposed to do it, of being like, I know this is a big ask because I'm asking you to do this thing. And then I realized, no, I think it's more empowering by saying, I'm asking you to do the thing and giving you the autonomy of a grown-up adult to say yes or no, instead of just apologizing so much.
Because that's also a way how we make whoever feel even worse again about the situation. It's like, hey, I know it's so bad. You shouldn't be doing this, but I'm asking, please, can you do it? And I know it's so uncomfortable. Yeah. And that also makes them feel like, hey, what?
As I get older, I mean, I always think like, what would my 80-year-old self do? Like, that's how I want to be talked to myself. I want people to be like, here's a question you can ask, you can answer yes or no. And I'd be like, yes or no. And it just makes things so much clearer. But there's so much dance around, I think, culturally too in the States about asking for things and asking for help or, anything like that. We're supposed to be like such a one-man team and you know what you're doing and be so strong. But I think the more we show our vulnerabilities and the more we can clearly communicate with each other, I mean, these things are just so much better, right?
Do you have any theories? Maybe it's a completely silly question and leaves to nothing, but do you have any theories on why Americans are like that?
Maybe service culture, tipping culture. You always have to get it your way there, and that's how people make money. Like, they have to greet you in a way, like, you come here and like, tipping is optional, like most of Scandinavia and Nordic countries. And then I think that's a big thing when you come there. Like, you're always greeted by people who want to help you, but they want to help you because that's how they get paid, and then they expect something in return. So, yeah, there's very accommodating. Let's put it that way. And here, let's say you go to a fast food place, and you're like, I don't want any onions on my burger. You're like disrupting the system. They're like, no. You take it off the burger yourself. Yeah. And I can appreciate that. It's more streamlined.
So generally, would you say that there are, like, because you've alluded to that already, but maybe just to already like voice it out, general difference, like big differences, like how your work is perceived in Europe versus the States?
This is pretty new to me because I feel like the only two opportunities I've had recently to showcase my work here has been through Fotografiska in Stockholm and here in Tallinn. So it's been incredibly refreshing to come over here in the sense that I meet an audience now that somehow, and then maybe this is cultural, that like gets the work and asks intelligent questions. While in the States, my work is considered more controversial, and it's almost like, especially like the physical weight of these women becomes something I have to talk about. Like, I can't just say bodies; they have to be like, they're fat bodies, and then they're like, why are you photographing fat bodies? Like, that's the question. Or why do you think it's important to showcase fat bodies? And it's like,
it sounds like almost they want it to be sensational.
Oh,
like they want it to be something very, very like important and very controversial.
Yeah, I would say every interview I've done there has used that verbiage in some way of forcing me to, like, the questions I get are usually written by email, so I can't have a discussion and say, hey, now you're projecting that this is the work I'm actually doing. I never said fat bodies, you did, but I still have to like address it. And I always just try to drive it home that I'm just photographing, like you say, different flowers. But that's rarely the theme of anything. It's really just having to either defend that is not what I'm doing, or try and divert from that narrative somehow. So yeah, that's definitely, the work can only be about one thing, and apparently it's about fat bodies.
And it always has to be a mission, a social mission. Yeah. I'm going to change topics now a bit, because before we started recording, you mentioned two very interesting countries, Iran and North Korea. Do you want to talk about what were you doing there? Whichever is more interesting to you.
Oh, both were great. I mean, I love traveling more than anything. This is why I will always be poor. I love going to places that where I don't know what to expect. Thankfully, I grew up in a household that traveled a lot when I was a kid, so that's been, I would say, one of the most wonderful gifts my parents gave me. I think that is like the best education you can possibly have, by meeting people from different cultures, and people are just people wherever you go, and I've never been anywhere where that wasn't true. So North Korea was definitely something I was really intrigued by because of obviously a country that's like so full of secrecy, and it's easy enough to get there, but it's not easy to really see what's going on. But you can still kind of see through the cracks. So yeah, it was an utterly fascinating journey. I ran a marathon, not because I'm a runner. I will never run again. I hate running. Like,
you ran a marathon in North Korea?
Yeah, I'll never run again.
Can you please expand on that?
I will expand on that. I only did it because I heard that was the only way you were going to go and explore the city of Pyongyang unsupervised, because otherwise you have a minder with you at all times. But if you do it by foot and you run, you can be by yourself.
Was there like an official marathon?
Yes, it was an official marathon.
How many people participated?
Oh, I don't know, thousands. Yeah, it was divided.
Most of them North Koreans?
I would say half and half, yeah. But we were not allowed.
Was the other half, every other tourist that
pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Wow. So we were all timed differently. So the North Koreans, I can't remember, ran first or after us, but with like a 5 minutes like stagger or something. So we were not allowed to officially run with the North Koreans. They kind of like they did their own marathon.
Did Kim Jong-un win the marathon?
He would have had he run it, and he probably has ran it many times.
Okay, and what was the experience like overall? How long did you stay there for? It was like a
time machine in some ways. I mean, there are certain things about that trip I'm still digesting even years later. I would say that there are things that I haven't experienced in a long time. I mean, I went to Mongolia, where I went on like a camel race trip with a friend, and I also went to Jordan to cross Jordan on horseback with Bedouins. And even in those two countries, like Bedouins will pull up their cell phone and be on their social media. But this is like not possible in North Korea, which is liberating in some ways as a tourist, maybe not living there, I can only speak for myself, but they cut off their electricity at like 10 p.m. The whole city goes completely quiet. There is no advertising, there is no like sound pollution, there's no light pollution. Like, it's just a very crazy place to be in some ways. And I think that might be one of the few countries where that is still going on. And you know, it made me really reflect upon how much we're, you know, so into our technology now, whether it be phones, whatnot, and it's the last place where I feel like I really just sat down like this without any distraction, because there is no distraction. They have one billboard in Pyongyang for a car they made, I think, many years ago. I don't think they make it anymore. I think they only made a couple. And that is the only piece of advertising they have. And going to such a bare country was kind of amazing for me, but probably very challenging for people that live there. I have a North Korean friend now in Los Angeles, so it's wonderful to speak to her and kind of understand the things that I saw.
And I still can't. She's somebody who escaped?
Exactly, yeah. And it's still hard to comprehend, you know, what she went through, for sure. So she looks at my pictures that I took there, and she'll tell me, wow, like you were in the main city, like we can't go there. We would never be allowed to go there. So she's experiencing my journey from inside North Korea in a very different way, and telling me what like all the signs mean, and really what's kind of going on behind the picture. While I get this narration like years later. So yeah, it's utterly fascinating. And wow. I would go back in a heartbeat again, just because it's like nothing else. So yeah, I was able to take a lot of photographs there, which I was surprised about. So I would love to make a book out there.
Beautiful. We're going to come back in a second. We're going to take a small commercial break, and we'll be right back. And we're back with Julia. Julia, before I'm going to ask you about how did you end up in Estonia, you also mentioned Iran. Can you also talk about what you were doing in Iran and how did you end up there?
I think what we were talking about when we were talking about Iran, it was just my severe food poisoning on a Greyhound bus, but I'm happy to talk about just how I went there too.
Yeah, please.
Which is really just the same story as I just told about North Korea. Just dying to see any place that I can't imagine from the inside. So yeah, I went there, and I had a spectacular time for about one day and then got the worst food poisoning of my life. I think we all did, the people I went with. And I actually shat myself on a Greyhound bus. So that was like one of the worst fears I've had since I was a child, was to shit myself in public. Been there, done that. It was just as bad as I thought it would be, but like I'm still here, so it's okay. And at least I don't have to worry about it. Like now I know what it's like.
Wow,
So it's kind of liberating.
No, this is very familiar to me.
Is it?
I did
You also
the same
shot yourself
thing
in a Greyhound bus?
No, in New York I did. Yeah, it wasn't on a bus. It was
actually,
outside.
it probably wasn't a Greyhound bus.
No, it wasn't a bus, but I had more than 3 hours of trains and subway to get home after that happened. Yeah, also worst food poisoning of my life.
You might be winning.
That was the only time because when I was living there, I only ate food from Whole Foods because I didn't trust American food. I only bought food from Whole Foods, and there was like a music video shoot, and I hadn't eaten for the whole day, and they only had like this very stereotypical American food, and I was so hungry, and I was like, it's gonna take me an hour to get to Whole Foods. It's closed by the time. I just have to eat this set food, and within half an hour, I was it was horrible. But I'm still here as well.
Yeah.
So that's a.
Do you feel liberated after that experience?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, not just gastronomically, but.
Yeah. No. It was wonderful. One of the most beautiful and also funny experiences of my life, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, how did you end up in Estonia?
For this wonderful show that we've been producing. I was here once when I was 9 years old with my parents. That was
9 years old?
Yeah, that's like 93 or something. So yeah, it's really changed. And I answered just on a open call that Fotografiska was putting out in regards to an exhibition they wanted to do on psychological needs, which is, to me, a super exciting topic. And I love the phrasing they had and what they're trying to do. So I've been working on a long-term project myself now in the States that kind of reflects those themes, and submitted that. And then they came back to me and said, oh, we want to make this exhibition about people living with psychological needs in Estonia. So I thought I was a very unexpected candidate for this particular show, but I'm very flattered that they picked me to be part of it. So I came here about a month and a half ago and traveled around Estonia by car and met all these wonderful individuals that are now depicted in the show, which I'm not sure if it has a title yet.
I'm not sure if it has a title yet as well, because I think I've seen a few options for it.
Okay.
But but maybe you wanna tell about the process. So the people are people with let's say mental challenges, and that are not, let's say, accepted or seen as let's say normal members of society. So was photographing them different for you than compared to people with physical?
Yeah. I would say yes in some ways, because we gave him proposals of how we imagined to shoot everyone, and I quickly realized, okay, I gotta just like throw this out of the window. I gotta just go with how things are gonna go, because there were some individuals that had forgotten they were gonna be photographed. There were some individuals who only wanted to be photographed outside or maybe inside, and so I was like, well, I have to honor their request, obviously, and I have to just be fluid and come in here a bit like clay and just see where this goes, which was actually incredibly relieving for me, that I could meet people really at where they were in their lives in that specific moment. So I was just trying to roll with it and capture their personalities to the best of my abilities. So yeah, that was really wonderful. And obviously there was a language barrier, which I thought was going to be very problematic. I had two wonderful translators helping me this whole trip, but still, it's, I would still say there's a language barrier, because there's only so much, time we had to communicate and whatnot. So it was just a challenge, a welcome challenge, to see if I can grasp how I perceived their personalities in this very brief moment I had with each person. But yeah, it was genuinely moving, super fun, like super creative people that I met. They all had varying degrees of abilities, I would say, and challenges. So yeah, it was wild.
How normal do you think you are?
How normal do you think you are?
I think I'm the most normal.
Yeah?
Yeah, look at me, come on.
Yeah,
Is
I'm
there
more normal
anyone
than you.
No, it can't be.
No, I think that, we all have our quirks for sure. And I think this is really the message we're also trying to drive home with this exhibit. We have to, and the nice things about it is that you go into this exhibit and you might not even at first glance understand that there's something that is different about these people, because that is the whole idea for me, was to drive home the idea of familiarity, that you look at them and you're like, well, that looks like my neighbor, that looks like my friend, or we don't look at them differently, and they don't want to be looked at differently. So I think that is the positive message of the show, and I think it's the less we think about us and them, and it goes for every aspect of our life. I mean, we're closer to being better people, and also having more rewarding relationships with the people in our lives. So absolutely.
Yeah, because one of the reasons why I'm asking that, and I know it's like a very provocative question, is because even though we don't think about it, everybody has like a meter of what's normal and what's not normal.
Right.
And you perceive like the people that you normally interact with as normal, and then there's somebody who's not normal, but you don't know where the exact line is. But with artists as well, just like you were talking about in the beginning, one of the reasons why you do the work that you do is that at some point you felt very uncomfortable about something. And now people who don't find a way to express it, they get very neurotic because it's somewhere inside of them, and they feel all of it, and maybe they can't express it, maybe they don't know how to express it. But artists at least are the ones that are supposed to express it for themselves and for the whole population as well. But if they don't do it, then it's gonna eat them up, and then you're just gonna be you're gonna have your strange neuroses, you're gonna be angry at strange things, you're gonna be insecure about certain things, and that's gonna make you into an abnormal person, if you know what I mean. But if you find a way to process it and transform it into something like, hey, this is what I feel, this is what I'm insecure about, this is what I want to express, this is how I feel sometimes, this is what I feel bad about, whatever, then it's like cleansing. You're cleansing yourself, and you're also cleansing the society as a whole, because again, most people maybe don't have the power to do that, or maybe are not taught how to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think just a sheer acknowledgement can sometimes be healing enough. I mean, growing up, I had panic attacks since I was 14, and I went around suffering with it forever, because there wasn't, you couldn't just go on Google, because I didn't have Google then, I don't think. But now I could have found a support group if it happened to me now or something, and found help. It took me years, and then finally I just had a doctor who sat down with me and actually looked at me and took me seriously. It was like, okay, let's make sure there's something wrong with you. And oddly enough, just meeting him and having a physical exam, and he gave me some beta blockers that I never took, but just knowing that someone acknowledged me and said, okay, this happens to people. You're not crazy, you're not alone. There are ways to, work with this, and that alone fixed me. And I'm not saying that that's an easy fix for everyone like that, but sometimes all we need to do is just finding people who take us seriously when we say, okay, here's this thing in my life that's hard. Like you say, if you just keep it to yourself, it's like a snowball effect.
Yeah, this is also something that they say about countries that have lots of depressed people, is that even if you have lots of depressed people, the suicide rate is not very high, because everybody is used to feeling bad. And that was also said about the Soviet Union. Everything is gray, everything is bad, you don't have good food, you don't have good entertainment, you don't have good anything. But because that's the way everybody's feeling, then you're like, yeah, it's normal. I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna keep on doing it. Because you feel, hey, it's normal. Like I say, hey, I feel like shit, and they're gonna say, yeah, everybody does. That's the way life works. But if you live in a country that has a very like a happy population or a very high living standards, and then you feel depressed, but everything around you, all the advertisements, movies, TV shows, everything is like, hey, life is amazing, everything is awesome. Then you feel like, hey, I'm not normal. But so much of like normality doesn't come from like facts about the way how we feel or what our physical or mental state, but it comes from like what's the standard in society. And so if everybody says like, hey, yeah, the way you see the world, the way you think, the way you perceive stuff, it's normal, then you feel normal because like, hey, I'm accepted. But if they don't, then you don't. But again, the normalcy doesn't come from within you, it comes from other people.
Yeah, no, and I think that's, I remember meeting a wonderful author for this project that I photographed too, and you know, he has a quote unquote normal job and nobody knows that he's living in an assisted place. And he said, you know, it's shameful for me to say. And that's, you know, it's because there's one aspect of his life that maybe he can't manage, but everything else is, you know, works just fine. But we all have an aspect of our life, I think, at all times, or at least at some point in our life that, you know, we need to manage in some ways. And, you know, for me, it's probably, yeah, my neurosis I used to have, and yeah, I'm sure we can all identify with that. So I think we hopefully can become less judgmental because not everyone needs the same thing. We all need different things to function optimally, I suppose.
Yeah, and did you figure out what caused your panic attacks?
No.
No?
No.
But you got rid of them?
I got rid of them, but yeah, I feel kind of cheated. I spent so many years of that, and maybe the gift was that I can empathize with people that going through the same thing. I don't know.
And what would you say your biggest lesson or lessons have been over the course of the past 10 years doing these projects? What have you learned about yourself, learned about other people? That
we're more alike than we think. Just be nice to each other. Do what makes you happy. Like all the cliches, basically. Yeah, is being taught to me every day when I meet people, for sure. I mean, the only thing I hear about are people regretting things they didn't do. And I know that's like the ultimate cliche, but it's also very true.
Exactly for that reason, because it's so true. And
yeah, because I was in hospice care. Well, I wasn't in, but I worked in hospice care for many years in Sweden as a summer job.
That was fun.
Yeah, no, it was actually really valuable. And I wish that was a thing people have to do in the United States instead of, you know, serving in the army or something, because we rarely talk about, you know, what is it to grow old, what is it to lose the things that we take for granted. And the thing I would see reoccurring, the thing that people were upset about were things they didn't do and relationships they didn't, you know, rekindle. It seemed like we can maybe accept a physically declining body, but there are certain things we can't repair maybe at that point, and those were the things people were really plagued by. So I think that was also an eye-opener very early on in my age. So I think that really spurs me in having hopefully rewarding communications with everyone, and also try and, you know, be honest all the time. I feel like when I was younger, like really young, I wish people would perceive me as pretty. And then I was like, I don't want to be pretty, I want to be smart. And now I'd rather just be a kind person. And it's not easy. It's not always easy. Like I can be a complete, I was gonna say, I can't say it, but you know. But you know, that's a work in progress.
Yeah. I want to be perceived as really, really tall.
Stand up.
I'm not. No, it's a joke because I'm not that tall. I just lost my train of thought. The motto of Fotografiska is inspiring a more conscious world, and this is also why we have your works, and most of your works that I have seen are very apropos to that that message. What do you think inspires a more conscious world, or how can we inspire a more conscious world? Or what has inspired a more conscious world for you the most over the past, let's say, 2, 5, 10 years?
Good communication, coffee, and comedy.
Good communication, coffee, and comedy. Wow, that's very good. That's very beautiful. It's almost like you rehearsed that.
I didn't.
She did. She rehearsed that beforehand a lot.
I did not know you were going to ask me that.
No, you didn't. Yeah, I know.
It wasn't that good.
Okay, what have been the biggest obstacles to doing what you've been doing?
The biggest obstacle? Oh. Myself.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you like yourself?
It's a complicated relationship.
Yeah.
I do my best. We talk every day.
Do you enjoy your own company?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, for the most part, I actually really do. I enjoy doing things on my own. I need a lot of alone time. I would say, take me out one night and I need like 3 nights to myself. Something like that. 25% I can give to others, and 75% I'm purely selfish.
Yeah, but that's a wonderful gift, isn't it?
Yes, provided I can give it to myself. I know a lot of people cannot, so it's privileged in that way.
Yeah. Also, I now remember what I wanted to mention beforehand, is that it's one of the most well-known like psychological facts, is that if you feel depressed, if you feel down, whatever, the best way to get out of it is to help other people and to focus on others, not yourself. To be like, oh, I'm depressed, I'm having panic attacks, I'm having this, that, like what can I do about me, focus on me. But the more we focus on ourselves, the worse we feel, because we can see more and more stuff that is not like okay about us, or stuff that needs improvement. But when we start helping other people, it's like it's one of the best antidepressants that there is. And if you're somebody who's artistically oriented and you can help other people in the way, for example, like you do, which is like, hey, I have an issue that I want to resolve about the way we see ourselves, the way we perceive ourselves, the way our insecurities inhibit our lives, and I can help somebody else with the same problem while I'm helping myself with that problem, then that's like just a wow, because it's
that can definitely be a wow, as long as you're helping the right person. You can also, help the wrong person without knowing it. And but I agree, I completely agree. And if all else fails, then I would say to fail beautifully is also a wonderful way of getting yourself out of your depression. Try like drawing with your left hand. Like do something you're gonna screw up. That is incredibly liberating for a start.
Try drunk driving. Well, I'm joking. Don't do that. Please don't do that. You're going to fail so beautifully. Now, okay, before we finish, I'm going to ask you one last question. Maybe give people some like bad advice, things that they shouldn't do. It can be about art, it can be about photography, it can be about life. It might be things that usually, let's say somebody gives advice, but you think like, hey, that's actually bad advice. You shouldn't be doing that.
Oh, that is a great question. Can I mull it over for 15 seconds
You
quietly?
can mull it over for 15 seconds, and I pretend as if I'm talking about something else while you do that, because this has been a very beautiful episode. And I can actually check if I wanted to ask you something else as well. Did I perhaps forgot something? Our editor can later pretend as if, I wanted to ask you about one more thing, because the only work of yours that I saw that was different from everything else was Dovetailed, where you photographed the Japanese hanging ropes, which is very beautiful. Like, is there a certain, like a specific story behind that? Because it seemed so left field.
It is very left field. That was a project with a Japanese geisha who visited America, and I met her through a friend of a friend, and we got talking, and she had a really interesting life story, and for some reason it was just serendipitous. She started talking about this photo shoot she always wanted to do where she is suspended in the air and through like shibari rope, but never found anyone practicing shibari, I guess, in Japan, which I thought was quite strange since that's where it comes from. But I just happened to know another Japanese lady that was teaching that particular rope skill in Los Angeles. So I put them together and they talked, and she asked, would you please just like do this shoot with me? So I said, yeah, of course I will. So it really just stemmed from something she personally wanted to do, but I felt really privileged to even peek into this kind of secretive world that I know very little about. So spending time with her and making this work was really quite something else.
Yeah, because it has this certain type of feeling. It almost feels like you're looking at something that you're not supposed to look at. It feels like a secret, but it not in a dirty way, but just like you've stumbled on something that you shouldn't have stumbled upon.
Right. Yeah, and I was surprised that she was so willing to do something kind of so private too in this context. But yeah, again, this is like why I just love what I do of feeling the privilege of peeking into these lives that are so far away from mine and yet on such a similar wavelength. I never felt like I'm connecting with anyone and go like, oh, that I can't identify with anything. No, I can identify with a lot more than I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna call the police. You're a sick person. I'm gonna report you.
Of course, no one said that about me, but yeah. Bad advice. I'm gonna come back to this now. Yeah, bad advice would be becoming someone who just photographs hot chicks on Instagram. There's a place for that. You can do it, but just don't do it because everyone else is doing it. No, actually, I don't know.
No, that was the most inspirational thing I have ever heard. I think the most inspirational thing ever said on this program.
Oh,
actually.
shit.
Yeah. Julia, SH, thank you very, very much. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise, thank you.
Ja suur aitäh kõikidele vaatamast ja järgmise korrani.